the bookshop of Beverly Farms.
Howdy, everybody. It is Sam Fightful, your host of John Updike's Ghost, your favorite little podcast about reading, writing, literature, bookstores, all things awesome. And I am here, as always, with Hannah Harlow. She happens to be my sister, the co-owner of the bookshop of Beverly Farms, and someone who has just returned from a vacation week of reading, which has stockpiled her with any number of books to talk about. How are you doing today, Hannah?
Doing great. I'm really just trying to catch up. It is 9 a.m. on Monday morning after being on vacation all week. My staff was amazing. All the booksellers let me be on vacation.
Wow.
Didn't even really have that many questions.
No crises whatsoever.
No crises. So I've really been disconnected for 9 days. And now
That's fantastic.
I'm just catching up. Yeah, it's great.
Indeed, live from the bookshop. I can see all of our internet orders lined up behind you.
Yes.
And before we go any further, we should let people know that what happens actually, because I don't know the answer to this, if you were to order books online during the great bookshop sale of the summer of 2024, do you also get the discounts, or are the discounts only applied in store?
The documentation we've created for the sale says in store only.
Aha.
And I will say that's partly because, someone chooses PayPal to pay online. It's very difficult to kind of retroactively adjust the prices. And are we going to make, and I'm not the sale is 20% off, hardcovers 10% off, paperbacks 30% off, a lot of our cards and gift items.
Seems confusing if it was on the internet. I don't know.
And so I'm not physically marking all of that stuff down in Book Manager.
No, it's just when you come to the register, you do the little /20 thing.
So it would reflect online. Yes. So it's hard to make it reflect online without doing a lot of work. So
well, it seems like a grand conspiracy to get our podcast listeners to come into our store. Is that what? Okay, I see. Aha. All right. So if you've been listening to the podcast in Cleveland, now is the time to organize your trip to Beverly Farms, because you can come in for our very special summer sale, which starts August 10th, which is a Saturday. So that's a weekend. So, if you start driving from Cleveland on Friday at noon, you could be at the store by 9 a.m. when the sale starts.
Right. And it's tax-free weekend in Massachusetts for the start of our sale. You are going to come work on a special Sunday tax-free sale weekend.
That is a thing that's going to happen.
11 to 4. You said you'd do it, so you have
to have that on my calendar. That is a thing for sure.
Yes. And if you're in Cleveland, you can't make it, order online, say, hey, I'm a dedicated podcast listener. Don't use PayPal. Use your Visa or Amex or whatever. And then leave us a note. Be like, I'm a dedicated podcast lister.
Wow.
Could I participate in the sale?
That'll be a test.
And we'll do it. Yeah.
We'll see if it. So let's do a little bet. Okay, the over-under on number of podcast listeners who leave us a note saying that I am a podcast listener in order to get a discount. The over-under on that is 1. Are you going to bet the over or the under?
Ooh, I'm going to optimistically go over.
Okay, you take the over, I'll take the under.
Okay.
I don't know what the stakes of the bet are, but we will. It's just, a test. We'll see what happens. So remember, I am a podcast listener. That will get you 20% off paperbacks, I think, 30% off cards and whatnot.
10% off paperbacks, 20% off hardcovers, 30% off cards.
I should probably know the details of our sale, but that's okay.
It's okay. I just said that. We're testing your listening skills.
Let's stop talking about capitalism. It is boring me already. I don't care. Let's talk about books, something I do care about. Since you have been on vacation and I've been gallivanting around New England.
You have been. You've really been on the road.
I have been on the road, but I have 2 books. So why don't we do a little agenda? I know you have 3 books and I have 2 books. So what are your 3 books?
My 3 books are Death at the Sanitorium by Ragnar Jónasson, an Icelandic writer. You Are Here by David Nicholls. And Margo's Got Money Troubles by Rufi Thorpe.
Aha. Okay. Those all sound great. I have Creation Lake by Rachel Kushner. A book
Cool.
that is coming out in September, I now see,
Mhm.
but you put it in a bag for me, so I read it.
Great.
And I read The Most by Jessica Anthony, who will be joining us in the shop tomorrow. You will not, if you haven't come by this point, you won't know about it
You're
because
gonna
the
miss
podcast
it.
comes out after the event. But regardless, I have read the book so that I'm not a total dullard when talking to Jessica Anthony. So those are my two books. Why don't we start with one of yours, since you have more books? Why don't we talk about Margo and her money troubles? Because I know you liked that one. You told me that you enjoyed it greatly when I
Right.
saw you at camp.
Yeah, and it's out already,
Oh, that's a good one.
which is great. And
Yes.
it's a book that
I believe this is a book that introduced you to the concept of OnlyFans, something that you
Yeah,
didn't
okay.
know about.
This is a
I'm
book.
floored by the fact that you did not know that OnlyFans existed until you read this book. It actually, if there's any proof whatsoever that you are the owner of a cozy bookstore, it is the fact that you have yet to become aware of OnlyFans.
Yeah, I had no idea. Sometimes you read a novel and there's definitely stuff in there that you're like, I know that's a real thing. But then sometimes you're just like, well, did they make this poem? Like, I don't know. So
Actually, I have something about
Yeah.
that in one of my books. But yes, that's
Okay.
all right. Like, are they making up this service or is this based in reality? Like, you don't even know. Is this speculative fiction, this world where you can go on the internet and sell,
Pictures
live
of your body.
videos of your body to loser men and women, I guess, who want to pay you a monthly fee? Is that a real thing?
It
What?
is a real thing, it
Oh my
turns out.
goodness. Yes.
I did not thankfully go do the research myself. Someone like you and your wife just said, no, that is a real thing, you dummy. So the book kind of opens with this young woman. She's like 19, 20. She's pregnant. She is, dropped out of junior college, though she's like, highly intelligent, really wanted to go to NYU, but she just didn't have the money and didn't want to like go into too much debt. Her English professor at her junior college knocks her up.
Ooh.
And so now she's pregnant and decides to have the baby, kind of like a little misguided, right? It's like everyone was like, this is going to ruin your life. Don't do it. Like her mom,
Right.
like
Yeah.
the professor is married and has 2 kids. Like, clearly didn't want her to have the baby.
Also, obviously, contemporary setting, as we have OnlyFans,
Yes.
not something that existed in 1985.
Totally contemporary. Her best friend's like, don't do this. You're an idiot. But anyway, she has the baby. She drops out of college. Her roommates, 2 of her 3 roommates are like, we don't want to live in this house with your baby. We're moving out. And so now and her boss fires her. She had a waitressing job. And her boss is like, you can't, and like no one wants to take care of the baby. The baby seems colicky or maybe just a normal baby, but like
Right. Mm-hmm.
the mom is like, your baby cries too much. I'm not taking care of your baby. And I told you not to
Wow.
have it anyway.
Mm.
And the roommates babysit, but they're like, your baby cries too much. So anyway, she loses her job, rent's due. Now she's on the line for like the 2 roommates who've left. So crisis, right? Here's our,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
so Margo's got money troubles and she finds out about OnlyFans and kind of posts a picture of her boobs and she gets some subscribers. She is able to like pay some bills. The real crux of the story is that her dad moves in and her dad is a former WWE wrestler. It's like amazing. It's like the dad is such a great character. And so the dad, whatever.
The dad's a showman. He's
the
like,
dad's a showman.
You want to
but
drive this
also-
OnlyFans account? I got tricks.
Yeah. Well, and it's also like, I need a place to live. Can I move into your apartment with you for a while? And she's like,
Right.
well, this solves the like rent problem and the like, he's actually super
You need to
helpful. He's like,
live in babysitter.
he's really good with babies. Like
Yeah,
everyone else
sure.
sucks. And he's like delightful with babies. He's just like this lovely character. He's like very zen, kind of like loves making tea. And then is like obsessed. He's kind of a semi-retired WWE wrestler manager. He, after his wrestling career,
Right.
He started managing some other guys.
Mm-hmm.
So he knows about relationships. So this whole book, like what I loved about this book is that it works on multiple levels. Like there's layers to it. So you can enjoy it as just like it's a good story.
Right. It's a little bit of like a farce, a romp or whatever.
Yeah.
But then
It's
you
a
also
romp.
have a nice family
It kind
drama.
of like, it takes this character who, like, you would, on the face of things, look at this, if she were a real person, and say, this is white trash. You know, you have like an unemployed single mother who sells pictures of her naked body for money, right? She's a sex worker.
Yeah, terrible.
Terrible. And college dropout, you know, like, yuck. But you like love this character, and you kind of see how she got into this, and it just like, you meet some of the other like sex workers, OnlyFans people, and like, there are these great ladies who just like are very sex positive, and
yeah,
so that's all
massive
great.
industry. Yeah.
I will say at the beginning, like, there's this weird thing happening with the narrative voice where she goes back and forth between first person and third person, where it's like, I'm Margo talking about myself. And then it's like, Margo did X. And the author kind of intrudes into this storyline very occasionally to remind you that this is all fake, that this is a novel. None of this is real. On this, in the same way that, like, you know, Margo's creating this OnlyFans persona, and the WWE is like, well, where's the line between what's real and what's fake? And like, that shifts. And like,
right.
you know, someone asked the dad, how much of WWE is real? And it's like a no question. You know, Margo's oh, don't stop asking this question. But the dad is like a sweet guy and is like, okay, if anyone else in the industry were to respond to you right now, they'd punch you in the face. But I will tell you, like, you know, it's a moving target. Like, yes,
right,
it is
yeah,
totally
it's
fake, but like,
it's
and so like the book kind of takes that question of like what's real and what's fake, and like addresses it in like multiple ways throughout the story. And so I think if you're like someone like us who's like super interested in like how books get created and like kind of interrogating the narrative, like there are things to pay attention to and to observe and to appreciate. I think it'd make a great book club book, because I think there's a ton to talk about. But I think if you're like a casual, very casual reader, you'd be like, what the F is going on? So, you know, I don't think it's like necessarily for everybody.
Right.
But I ended up really appreciating just everything that went into it.
That sounds great. No, I'm definitely interested.
If I have one critique.
One critique. Okay.
It is that she, in the book, going viral was just like insanely easy. It was like,
yeah,
you know, there's this whole like discoverability problem on OnlyFans. So they were like, well, let's make let's do TikTok accounts to have people be able to discover OnlyFans.
Right.
And they created a TikTok account. They posted 5 videos and they were like, well, aren't we going viral yet? Oh no, we've failed. We must give up. And I'm like, and then it's like, all of a sudden this other account discovers their 5 videos and then they blow up. And I'm like, no.
That was actually one of the points I thought about making, but didn't really want to reveal just how much I know about OnlyFans, which is there are countless OnlyFans people now who, like, the market has been so flooded that it is actually very difficult to make any money on OnlyFans.
No, she just, you know, she does it for like 3 months and all of a sudden she's making like 30 grand a month or whatever. And you're like,
well, you know, maybe she's super hot or whatever. But like, you know, the sex worker talk is very popular in the like leftist spaces that I hang out in. So there's always lots of talk about how, you know, like as soon as sex workers find a place that they can actually make some money and like, start to, you know, get to respectability, there's always something that comes in and, you know, makes it impossible for them to actually monetize, and all the money goes to some, you know,
and in the book,
internet
she ends
platform, and
there's a custody, like all of a sudden the professor baby daddy wants like custody. Like he asked for full custody because he's like, I don't want my kid being raised by a woman who's like makes her money from OnlyFans.
Yeah.
And so they get into this custody battle, and you know, she's like being invested, and then like someone else calls, you know, Child Protective Services on her. So you see her kind of like justifying herself, and there's this whole like, you know, sex work is legal.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's the storyline of like California would rather have a single mom who can pay her bills and be a sex worker than like a single mom who can't pay her bills and raise her kid.
Yeah.
So she ends up, whatever. But there's a lot. It's a rich, layered novel.
I like it. It's a feminist novel, clearly.
Yes.
I think both of my novels are attempting feminism. I think Jessica's, we'll go
I
with her
assume
because I think she
Jessica's
succeeded.
Yeah. Okay.
So her story, it's interesting because her story is not contemporary. It's called The Most. It is set in like 1958, right? We are in the post-war era, but we haven't gotten into Vietnam or anything like that. We're very much in, classic Ozzie and Harriet kind of 50s style stuff. And, there are not the opportunities for sort of feminist blooming that exist nowadays. So the main character is Katie, who was so, if I'm gonna have some discussion with Jessica about this tomorrow, right? But
Yes.
so I'm curious as to how much research she did into like what competitive tennis was like in 1957. But so this
Okay.
one, back-to-back national titles as a collegiate tennis player.
Okay. I didn't see that coming.
Then instead of going pro, she marries this beautiful boy named Virgil, who has no prospects whatsoever, goes into the insurance business, gets a crappy job in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, has to leave Pawtucket for reasons. And then they wind up in Delaware, which is, they keep calling it's like Newark, Delaware area. So I'm always confused about
Yeah.
actually Newark, New Jersey. And then there's even a little aside about a person who moved there by mistake, meant to go to Newark, New Jersey. Regardless, they find themselves, in domestic, relative, unhappiness in an apartment because they had to sell a house because of reasons. And so it's like this, they have two kids, and it's sold as like, woman goes into a pool and refuses to get out. We've actually, said that line or whatever. I think it
Yeah.
does the book a disservice. Like that
Oh.
is kind of the central conceit, obviously, but like her time in the pool does not take up a large part of this actually pretty short novel. It's only about 130 pages. And I just think it sells it short. I'm going to ask her, like, were you cool with this marketing? Because like the cover has her in the pool and like it's all,
Yeah.
it almost like in the pitch, I was like, oh, is it going to be like speculative in some way? Is there, like, but like it all happens in a little day and she's not actually in the pool for that long. She's in the pool
Oh,
for like
really?
3 or 4 hours or something, 5
Oh.
hours maybe. I don't know. And it's mostly just, and there's a whole build up to why she got in the pool, and the whole story is told mostly in flashback, right? So, you get
Right.
and it's, the way you were saying about perspectives is interesting because she doesn't necessarily announce it, but the chapters alternate between Virgil, the husband's perspective,
Oh.
and Kathleen, the wife's perspective, right? So
Yeah.
you get like these little overlapping scenes. They don't always overlap, but they sometimes do. And so even dialogue will be repeated a couple of times. And like,
Oh.
so you're seeing like the different takes on the things that have happened to them in their
Right.
marriage. And you certainly sympathize with Kathleen. Like, it's definitely a feminist novel in that, she just, made allowances for this dude because like didn't see a way to like make a life for herself, felt like she needed a dude because that's how it works, settles down, becomes a housewife, is obviously not fulfilled by that. And then I'm not going to give away, like, there's actually quite a few little reveals in it,
Oh, great. Love a good reveal.
and so I would say, like, if I have a problem with the novel, it's that like I love Jessica's writing. I like these characters a lot. I like the setting a lot. Like I could have read this book for a lot longer, And so
Right. Oh, you feel like maybe you could have used
like I
more.
wanted to know like a lot more about these stories. Like, and it's not that she like gave me short shrift necessarily. It's just that, you know, everything happens really fast. And so it's
Yeah.
like I'm not 100% fully invested in who this woman is and like, do I fully buy into her moral high ground? And like, Virgil is like, he seems to have some emotional depth. Like he's not just like this cartoon character male of the 50s. He's like trying to be one of them, but really he just wants to like hang out on the beach and play the saxophone that he can't play. And there's just lots of interesting stuff. And I was like, oh wow, it's over? Shit.
Yeah.
It's we don't necessarily get a fulfilling conclusion. It's not really the sort of like it's not a novel where like there's a climax and then a
Right.
denouement or anything. It has a little shape to it. It's not like it's completely aimless or anything. But um I don't know. She's just really, really talented. Like in the perspective shift is done really well, and these kids are weird and creepy, and I wanted to know more about almost everybody, and I was just like, oh, now it's over. I
Okay.
have lots of stuff to ask her about, like she's the sort of writer, and so that's why I'm curious. It's like there's all these little details. That's what I was saying about like the OnlyFans, whether it's made up or not. Like,
Right.
there's this scene where she like sings a couple of lines from, a song in a movie. And I totally had that thing. I was like, is that a real movie? Is that
Right.
like,
This is a real song?
right. But I think
Yeah.
she's the type of writer that goes in and finds all these little details,
Yeah.
like the day that she goes into the pool is the day that the Russians sent up Sputnik 2. So there's
Um,
lots of little Sputnik 2 references. And,
right.
like you get this idea of, the citizenry of the United States, feeling the Russian menace and all this sort of
Mm.
stuff is kind of like, laying in there. But there's a lot more she could have done if she wanted to. So
Yeah.
she wrote the book while she was. Do you know the story? I can't tell if Peter, even if you know it.
No.
She won this like, or I don't know, applied for. I don't know how exactly she acquired this role, but she was a bridge guard for this like bridge that's in the Czech Republic, I believe it. Oh no, in Slovakia. She was guarding the Maria Valeria Bridge in Staruvo, Slovakia, and so it's like an artist fellowship where you literally, I
Oh.
think, sit in this like
Guardhouse?
guardhouse that you. I mean, I don't
But
think
you can
you
write the whole
actually.
time?
I think so. Like, I don't think you need.
You're not
It's
actually like
written while she was
guarding
doing this
anything.
job. She wrote the book while she was doing this job, but like,
Huh.
I think it's clearly a ceremonial position. Like, I don't think
I
she's
mean,
like manning the gun tower or anything. Um, so like, but she's just the type of person who has these like just weird experiences, and so like, there's all these little
yeah. I mean,
fine grained details.
you've described her as an artist
Yes.
before. And so I do think you can, knowing a little bit about who the author is, you can give a generous reading of the book,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. I
You
mean,
know what I
I
mean?
think her personality comes through, and I've also read like everything she's written, so it's like, and I also associate her with the music business because her husband, John, is in music. And so
Mhm.
like this felt like the book felt to me like a single,
Yeah.
like not a whole album, but like
Right.
this is just like one great song,
Cool.
And so like in the
Yeah.
same way that one great song, I'm like, what else do I listen to now? Like I wanted more.
Yeah.
So I'll talk to her tomorrow and we'll find out more about it.
Yeah. Great. I can't wait to hear your conversation. And I'm going to talk about Death at the Sanatorium by Ragnar Jónasson next.
Yes. This
Mostly
sounds like a
because
little bit of a doc read.
it was a total doc read. Like I said, this is an Icelandic author that our mother has read before. And this book comes out in September, on September 10th. And I knew Mom would like to read it. Like I had the ARC for this new book.
Right.
So I brought it up to Maine with me on vacation, knowing I'd leave it for Mom. And we each read it in a day.
Really?
Yeah. So when you said Jessica's book was a single, like in a way, that made me think of this book because it's not like a ridiculously good book. It's just a very satisfying mystery. It's a super fast read and it's just solid, right? But it's not going to blow your mind.
You wanted to know what happened.
But you want to know what happened. And you get to the end.
It happened in a satisfying way.
Yeah. So it's a mystery that takes place in 2012. And there's some scenes from 1953. And there's some scenes from maybe the 70s. So there's a sanatorium and, this outside, kind of in the middle of nowhere, Iceland, let's say, not in Reykjavik.
Mm-hmm.
And in the 70s, there were a couple of deaths that kind of conveniently got solved. And now in 2012, there's this character who, for his criminology degree, is looking at the case kind of with fresh, contemporary criminology ideas.
Right.
And realizes
Science.
maybe we didn't solve this correctly. So he goes and interviews all the remaining players. And so there weren't, it's like of the two deaths at the sanatorium. And it wasn't it was formerly a TB sanatorium. And at the time of the deaths, there were just like a few people left doing research. It wasn't like active patients or whatever. So there were only like 5 people who could have done it. And he goes back and he interviews like the remaining people who are alive, which is maybe only now like 4 people. I can't remember. It's very few. But so you get to the end of the book and you're like, well, there's all these people and like it has to be one of them. And I still have no idea who it is.
Right.
So, it all gets tidily solved up in the last few pages.
X plus Y equals Z. And
then there's like a kind of a shocking last chapter that affects the kind of main character, the criminology guy from 2012. Which
it turns out it was his father who killed everybody.
Just it's something like you are getting a storyline about his personal life, and so it's like something that happens in his personal life, like unrelated to the murders. Which I didn't really know how to interpret it. Mom thinks it's setting it up for a sequel, so I would not be surprised if that were the case. Mm-hmm. I did find the author's bio super interesting. This is a guy who, at like 17, was like, I want to translate more of Agatha Christie's books into Icelandic. And so he just like picked the shortest one and like gave it a go and then like went to some publisher and was like, would you publish this? And they were like, yep. And then he just like translated, one a year for a while.
I always wonder about that sort of shit. It's like,
I know.
There's no way for the author to know whether it's a good translation or not.
Right.
Like, maybe they made my book shitty. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? But I just love this idea that he was translating all these Agatha Christie books, which made him understand her way of writing.
Awesome at plotting and
yes. And so I think he kind of has a lot. You can see that influence in his.
That
mysteries.
is certainly a great way to train yourself to write mysteries. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think that Rachel Kushner could have taken a few more lessons from Agatha Christie, personally.
Oh, dear. Okay.
So
she's a pretty celebrated writer.
Yeah, no, she's famous. She wrote books called The Flamethrowers and The Mars Room. She's a 2-time National Book Award finalist. Hernan Diaz has the blurb on the back saying this is a reinvention of the spy novel in one cool, erudite gesture.
Okay.
The New York Times Book Review has called her one of the most gifted authors of her generation.
Wow.
So, I'm not saying she's a bad writer.
Right.
What I'm saying is it is taking way too long for this book to get going. I'm halfway through the book.
Yes.
I don't think I'll finish it because I don't care about any of the characters. I don't care what happens to any of them. And I think partially I am poisoned by that last book. Remember I read Time Machine, right? And I remember we complained, Big Time. I'm sorry, Big Time.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right. Ben Winter's book, Big Time.
The Ben Winter's book. Got it.
Yeah, Big Time. And remember we were complaining that there was like the badass, pretty assassin woman.
Oh, God, yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is the main character of this book. And so I'm a badass, pretty assassin. I'm infiltrating this group of environmental terrorists in the countryside of France. And I have an in because I have made this boy love me.
And is
this
everybody
boy,
French?
yes, everybody's French.
Okay.
And this French boy is going to introduce me to his childhood friend, Pascal, who is like the leader of this environmental terrorism group that they think like blew up some earth movers or something. I don't know. It was like some not that big deal thing.
Mhm.
And, so it just suffers from all those things that we were, again, Rachel's a woman, so she can write a woman however she wants, right?
Right.
Like, but it's just like, oh, he was playing pinball and I sat down and I drank and I showed him my boobs and then he was in love with me and now he's going to introduce me to the biggest environmental terrorist of all time, and it's just
Yeah.
like, it's so pat and like, I guess it's like just like 007, goes and,
Sure.
what, like, it's just, I don't know. I guess she's like, again, reinventing the spy novel. I guess it's supposed to be feminist. They're like, oh, it's a woman who's doing these things instead of a dude. But like, I don't know. Just like the whole thing is like, okay, I guess you're a badass who can just make anybody fall in love with you. Good for you.
Right. You sort of want the reinvention to be like, well, women would do things differently.
Right. Like, it's
not
exactly
like the way the guys would do it.
I couldn't have said it better myself. It felt like, oh, it's Daniel Craig as a girl,
Right. Yes.
I'm like, okay, whatever. But also, right, and I think I could deal with that if the plot moved faster, right? But
Right.
so it is interspersed with she has like hacked into, oh, she's also a hacker, and she figured out his password on the 9th try. Like, it's like it doesn't work that way. Actually,
Right.
like on your 4th try, they're like, no.
Right.
But
Shutting you down.
anyway,
Is
figured
it
it out on the
contemporary?
9th. What's that?
It's
Yeah,
all
it's right
happening
now. Yeah,
now.
it's all right now. So like I can gloss over all of that, but
Right.
like there was like huge portions of the novel where she is described we don't like, I think it actually would be cool if we saw the emails like and they were in like email text and I was getting like found text, like I can do that. But instead she is recounting the content of emails that are being sent from this guru guy to Pascal, right? It's like one level up of environmental terrorist guy, right? And it's like all this like, well, the history of Cro-Magnon and why, Neanderthals are, misunderstood. And then like, oh, the Kaggle racial group that was in France who was discriminated against, and just like giving me all this like all-time history to like give me the rich nuances of this environmental terrorists, like, where is this going? Are these secret code words? Blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, I don't care. I don't care about Neanderthals. I don't care about Homo erectus. I don't care about this like ethnic group. I don't know if it's real or it's not real. I don't know if this is like deeply researched science or not,
Right.
And I was just like, are we going to get to the point where you meet the terrorists or, like, I just, I don't know. I wanted something to happen. Maybe I just wasn't in the mood for it. Maybe I wanted a doc book and this is not a doc book.
Not a doc book.
But like,
not a spy thriller that's like a thriller. It's a spy novel.
Yeah. And I guess it's supposed to be like a slow burn or whatever, but I just didn't like anybody, I was like, I didn't like the main character. Like, okay, you duped this guy. And also I sympathize with all of the environmental terrorists, right? Like,
well, that's the thing. It's like,
do
we hate the environmental terrorists? I feel like maybe we don't.
I think we're supposed to sympathize with them. It's because like, oh, the government is taking all these underwater aquifers and putting them into like some giant plastic lined tank, which is supposed to be better for corporate ag or whatever. So like she's, morally conflicted. I've been hired by, the French government or, some agribusiness that it's kind of always amorphous who has hired her to do these things.
She's not working for the government?
She got fired by the CIA. Now she's like a, gun for hire.
Work for hire. Yeah.
And I was just like, I don't know. I didn't know who or what I was rooting to happen. I just didn't know what I was supposed to
totally
want.
hear you. And I feel like I would feel the exact same way if I were to read this book, but I guarantee you this book's going to be on like best of the year lists and like she's going to get great reviews. And it's like once people have called her the best writer of her generation, like they don't take you off that pedestal no matter what you write. And like, great for her, really happy for her. But like, it's maybe not the like page turner.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely
all
not,
wish
I'm
it
not,
were.
you know, like, and the writing is pretty good. Like there's a lot of like, so it's again, like, remember, I can't remember what book it was. Oh, Fire Exit, right? So one of my criticisms of Fire Exit was that like you would get these sort of, it's told in the first person, but you would still get these like sort of literary asides, like a description of the scenery.
Yeah.
That I was like, well, I thought I was in this dude's brain. This dude's
Oh, right.
brain
Yes. I
shouldn't
remember
be
you.
able to produce this description, right? And kind of the same thing, right? Like, again, this is told in the first person, and she's like a badass spy person or whatever. But then there'll be like, like these really nice descriptions of like locations and like, again, like, does this woman have this literary appreciation? She's observant in this like artistic way, and yet she
Right.
wants to like infiltrate and, work for the CIA or something. Like, I don't believe her motivations, I guess, if we're going to get all this artsiness. Like,
Sure.
shouldn't she be like cold and calculating and not care about this stuff? Or,
Right.
like, I didn't believe the character. I was like, I
Hmm.
don't think this person exists. I don't believe this character in any way.
Okay.
So I don't think I'll even finish it. Yeah.
Okay. I have no segue. My last book is so different. It is You Are Here by David Nicholls. And it's like romance. David Nicholls, broke onto the scene with One Day, which became a movie with Anne Hathaway. More recently, it's been a show on Netflix, which I enjoyed watching.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
These things went right through my cultural netting.
Yeah, One Day was like a bestseller, like way back in the day, like 20 plus years ago, probably.
Oh, okay.
But it's like, and it's also a romance of, two characters, and you just check in with them on the same day each year. So it's like August 14th or something.
That's One Day, not this book.
That's One Day, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think he's written a few other books that, really didn't take hold in the United States. He's a British author.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was sort of reintroduced to him in 2019 because I was still at Houghton Mifflin, and they had picked up his newest novel called Sweet Sorrow. Mm-hmm. And I was the marketing manager on that book, and we tried to kind of relaunch him in the United States. We flew him over from the UK for this, for the Winter Institute event. They introduced him to booksellers who all really loved One Day. And then I left before it came out. The book published as a paperback original in August 2020. So again, like, not a great time to publish, but I hand sold 12 copies that year in the store.
Really? Wow.
I loved it. Like it was a slow start, but once you got into it, and that book was a summer romance with this kid who's just graduated from high school, is kind of at loose ends, but sees a girl who's super hot. And she's like, oh, I'm off to be in this Shakespeare production. Like, we're just getting started. And so he's like, he goes the next day, and he's like, hey, I'll be in this production. And he's not a theater guy at all, but they they're psyched to have more people. He gets a bit part, and he ends up falling in love with like everybody in the cat, becomes friends with everybody. And then he and the girl also get it on. And it's like, sweet, but it's also hysterically funny. Like, I remember reading that book and just laughing out loud. And Jason kept being like, what are you reading? Oh my God, can you go someplace else? Like, you're so annoying. You keep laughing.
Right.
So this new book, You Are Here, I was very excited to read it because I think he just does great, like adult, not adult X-rated, but just people who are adults, like romances.
Right. Yeah.
That are charming and funny. So I would put You Are Here above One Day, but below Sweet Sorrow, because I still really love Sweet Sorrow. But You Are Here was like a charming story of two people who have gone through a divorce, and then COVID hit. And so they've been kind of alone in their homes for a really long time. And they have a mutual friend who kind of arranges, not actually for them to meet, but she was arranging like a group gathering where they're going to go on a walk across England. And the main
Mhm.
character guy was like, I'm going to walk coast to coast. And everyone else was just going to join him for 3 days. And it was supposed to be this big group, but a lot of people bailed. And so it ended up being these two characters on this long walk. And over the course of the walk, over many days, they like fall in love. And
As one does.
it's just charming and funny. And you know what's going to happen, but you don't care. You know they're going to end up together. And you're but you're just enjoying the ride.
Yeah. Story of them getting together. That's always, yeah.
Yeah. So
It reminds me a lot of Nick Hornby in the way that you are describing him.
It's a lot like Nick Hornby. I have not read any Nick Hornby in a while, but I know we've sold a lot of that book.
I usually describe Nick Hornby as romances for boys because they're like romances from the male perspective in general, right? Like
yes.
Doofusy dude who's like, oh, I love this chick and I'm going to screw it up, but we're together at the end.
Yeah. And, that is what David Nicholls does, but he does the female perspective too. Like, Sweet Sorrow, I think, was just the dude's perspective, but this was alternating chapters, and the one day you get both perspectives, I'm pretty sure. And I didn't hate how he wrote the women. Like,
that's good.
He's solid. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't realize he wrote the introduction to the copy of The Bookshop that I have by Penelope Fitzgerald. So
I love The Bookshop by Penelope Fitzgerald.
I know, it's so good. But yeah, he wrote the little, forward for the re-release back in 2015.
Oh, cool. I didn't realize
we've actually sold like 8 copies of that, which is crazy.
Well, I don't know if we have a copy right now. I think we probably...
No, it looks like we do.
Oh, we do? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of always have that in stock because I think, well, it's about a bookshop, but, and it's not necessarily the happiest book.
No, it's definitely not a happy ending. No, it's not. Sweet Sorrow, really... we've told, you did sell 12 of those, but we don't have any of those in the shop now.
Maybe I'll bring that in again. Yeah. It was like one of those books where I just was like, this is hilarious. But then no one ever came back and said, yes, you were right. So I started 2020, like people weren't necessarily like passing through the store all the time.
Yeah, no, 2020 you didn't get a lot of feedback for sure.
But sometimes you sell a lot of a book, hand sell, and then you start to doubt yourself if you don't get
like, does this book actually suck? What's going on here? All right. Well, that brings us to the end of our books this week. We have events coming up at the shop.
Susanna Talley is a local author who wrote a memoir, and we are hosting her at Hastings House for her launch event. She is lovely. The Dollhouse is her memoir of, a life of love. I believe she had 4 husbands, and kind of told through these like kind of elaborate dollhouses that she made. I would say Susanna is an artist, and that comes through in the book. That's
Thursday, August 15th at 6:00.
Gonna be great. I believe I'm interviewing her. So
the very next day, we have a meet and greet with Deborah Ann Powlick and Cheryl Dubois.
We do. They will be in the shop, kind of signing copies of their book, and happy to talk to anyone who wants to stop in and hear about it. They do historical fiction, and it is all locally based. So for people who love a good local, I think it's Revolutionary War.
Yes. They've written 2 novels, The Revolution and The Revolution 2.
Cool.
Which I've not really seen a book with a 2 after it. I'm not sure I've seen a sequel in that way. So
I know.
There you go.
There you go.
And then, actually, we should have. I know. Why aren't there sequels to books with the 2?
I don't know. Maybe we should write our own. Schubert, the Traveling Seal.
2. Yes. Actually, that's genius. How have we not done that already? Oh my God, that is so dumb.
Coming your way in 2025.
Notes. Schubert, the Traveling Seal 2.
Amazing.
He's in the pond again.
Okay. And on that note,
all right.
Enjoy
on that note, we will
summer.
See you all later. Bye-bye.
Bye.